What's going on, people? Welcome back to Premier League Unpacked. And as you can see, it's the original to myself and Bish. What you're telling me, people, make sure you're smashing a like on this video, subscribe if you're new. But there's no other place to dive into other than the Super Cup with Manchester City. They have run out as the winners, even though it was on penalties. But Bish,
Mm.
talk to me, man. What you telling me about the game?
It's a weird one. There's a lot of games at this time of the year at the moment that are kind of nothing games, but you you were so hungry for football, we want to make them into something. I think we kind of did that a bit with the community shield or charity shield or whatever they call it now. Obviously not to knock Arsenal winning that, but you kind of expressed a similar sentiment after Arsenal won it, that it feels good to win a piece of silverware and it feels good to win, to just be playing again and watching your team compete. But obviously, it's not a trophy that's necessarily the most well regarded.
Mm.
But maybe that's just because I've never been in this position before. I mean, to be into this Super Cup, you've got to win the Champions League, and I guess there was a few moments watching the game where I was reminded of some of them moments in Istanbul, and just kind of made me think more back to the fact that we actually managed to get over the line and win the Champions League. Seeing him, Kyle Walker coming out and holding the trophy, that also kind of really drove home that Gundogan is actually gone, and how much of a hole he's going to be this season. But yeah, it was a good experience to see us win out there. I'm glad I didn't fly out there in the end, because it was a pretty bit of a flat game. And even with the penalties, you could see that kind of there was a relaxedness of players and teams that didn't really have that much riding on it. So it's always a bit of a weird dynamic, but it was fun nonetheless, and I'm just hoping that it doesn't affect us too much in our next game in the Premier League, because squad's looking a little bit thin already. So yeah, I don't know.
Well, we know you've got
Mixed
plenty of dough to
feelings.
splash out. September the 1st is here. But how did you find the performance without Kevin De Bruyne in the team? Because obviously we know he's out for a lengthy period of time. They're saying that it could
Mm,
potentially be for the rest of the year. How did the
yeah.
performance look to you? Did it look like the normal City, or did it look like a City that was staggering a little bit?
Um, So I think there's two things. I think we didn't look completely fluent and fluid, but I think that was partly to do with the occasion, to do with it being early in the season. There's still young players that were getting a good run out. I mean, fair play to Cole Palmer. Both games that he's played in, he's scored goals and got his name on the goal sheet. But I think he didn't really play much last season. So for players like him to be kind of finding a way in there and figuring things out, obviously um, it's not a long-standing and familiar City first 11 that we're used to, where all of that chemistry has been built up over years. Kovacic, again, I've been really impressed with. Um, he was a signing that I didn't really think that I wanted, or didn't know that I wanted when he came in through the door. And I think I kind of bundled him in a bit with the likes of Havertz, um, even like Timo Werner's, just a certain group of players that came in similar-ish time. I'm not sure if it was the same window. I think Werner maybe came in a bit earlier, but there was a lot of players from that Chelsea era that I just thought, I don't really want, nothing over there looks attractive. But
Mm.
since he's come, he looks a really good player, and he looks a different player in this City lineup. Or maybe I just wasn't aware of what type of a player he was, but um, he looks like he could be a really good replacement for Gundogan. Um, Somebody that kind of has that little bit of defensive steel and defensive kind of understanding and awareness, but is progressive on the ball and is confident and comfortable on the ball going forwards. Um, so it was a weird one. We still didn't look completely fluid, like I said, but I actually think there are some positives that we can take from losing KDB. Obviously, we lost KDB, which is, you're losing one of the best players in the world. That's a huge blow.
It's
It's
hard to
gonna,
say then, bro. I don't know what
it's
kind of positives you could take from that because for me, he's the
yeah.
best midfielder in the league.
I think I think where I was going with it is not so much that it's like there's going to be a positive impact on the pitch in terms of how many games we win, or going after the title, but I think that there's a few players in and around that part of the pitch for City who have Foden is a prime example, and is probably top of the list of people who haven't really managed to um, get a hold of a set position and make it their own, and also players that have maybe a little bit been playing in the shadow of some of the KDBs, even to maybe to a lesser extent the Mahrez, the Bernardo Silvas, but have kind of not had an opportunity to really take control as the main kind of midfield maestro and kind of conductor in there in the middle, because obviously when KDB is on the pitch, he's going to take over that role. And I think with KDB being gone and with Gundogan not being here anymore, obviously on the surface, that's a huge hole and presents a huge issue for trying to go again and compete against this Arsenal team. But in terms of longevity and in terms of some of the young players that are meant to be the future of this club, like Phil Foden, because remember, De Bruyne's 32 now, I think. So obviously he's getting more and more injury prone, so we can't rely upon him for the next 5 years. Do you know what I mean? Some of these young players that were meant to be, Phil Foden specifically, meant to be the best thing out of England in, generations, and has kind of stagnated. So I think it presents an opportunity where certain players could rise up and fill them spaces and have the opportunity to be the main man in this team, or at least in the midfield. Obviously, they're not going to be maybe overshadowing the likes of your Haalands or the solid defense that we have, but there's a space in the middle for players to get a bit more of a grip of the game. And that's Grealish and other players also who have been playing better are still going to have the opportunity to try and capitalize on really having to take on more responsibility for making things happen and making things tick in the middle of the park. So that was kind of what I meant, I guess.
Could we see maybe Grealish moving back into a more of a midfield role and Foden playing out on the left with Palmer now on the right, or even Alvarez on the right with Haaland up front? Because Grealish, before he's come to City, obviously we know that he can play that role. He played it for Villa, where he was a bit more deeper in midfield. Obviously, he did get deployed out on the left here and there, but he can play that midfield role. Do you reckon that's something that Pep might look towards? Because, like you said, Kevin De Bruyne, he is 32. You got to try to look for kind of replacements within the next few years or so, unless he ends up like Modric. What's his name? I was going to say Modric. Then Modric.
Yeah. Modric, the original.
You know what? I hate that Modric so much, bro. I can't get his name out of my head. I swear, I just keep it real. You get me? Because I had my sights set on him to come to Arsenal, and then he kind of fucked us over. But
yeah. He's not been the most special thing since he got there, though. So you might have dodged the bullet on him anyway.
Yeah. It's just,
but I get your point. Unless he turns into a Modric and gives us another 4, 5, 6 years of this prime level, then which he might. But Modric wasn't having this many injury issues at this age, and also Kevin De Bruyne is quite explosive. I think we forget that sometimes because of his distribution. A lot of people maybe don't realize that part of what makes him so effective is how explosive he is. Kind of like Steven Gerrard a little bit in that way that he can, once he picks up the ball and starts driving with it, he's fast. He can move quickly with the ball. It's powerful, and that's kind of what starts to open out the pitch in front of him to give him options to play these incredible passes or smash things in from 30 yards or whatever. It's because of that explosiveness. And obviously, with injuries and with age, you can start to lose that. And we don't know. I think obviously he's a footballing genius. I don't think he's suddenly going to be Kaka overnight, but I think that he's going to be affected in the next couple of years. So we need to figure out who's going to fill them holes. To come back to what you were saying about Grealish, I think instinctively that would seem like the sensible thing, right? Grealish comes inside, Foden goes out on the wing. But the fact that for the last 12 months, 18 months, Foden hasn't really been getting a game out on the wing. There's been times when, even when we had the likes of Mahrez here, there was times when someone was injured or someone wasn't available, and oftentimes Foden was still only coming off the bench to come on the wing. He was sometimes out on the right, sometimes out on the left. He'd never really had a set position where it was like, except for the start of last season, and even then he wasn't really playing on the wing. He was like playing off Haaland as like a second striker almost. And we got a lot of joy. That was when he, up until Christmas last year, people forget that Foden had as many goals as Rashford had got by March or something, and almost as many assists. He was like head to head with Saka at kind of the Christmas time, and then obviously Saka just kept on going, and Foden kind of lost form and was losing minutes. So it's a bit. I think a lot of people are reading into that probably Pep is either there's something deeper going on that we don't know about, or Pep is trying to find a space somewhere else on the pitch long term for where Foden's going to be. And sometimes with Pep, when he starts to have a new idea about where someone's going to play, there'll be a transitionary period where he's asking them to do different things. He's asking them to train different things. He's asking them to play in a different way. And we may be a bit unsure about that player or the position that player is going into or how that. And then oftentimes, like with a John Stones, these players begin to thrive in that role, and then we maybe get a bit of a better understanding. So I think that's why a lot of people are reading into it that Foden is the one that he's trying to bring inside, and that Grealish is probably going to be left out on the wing where he's proven to be successful and offering as an outlet. I think that's the big thing with Grealish, is that he can always hug the byline and create enough space to receive the ball. And whenever he receives it, he's so press resistant that he gives us a pressure release valve. I think I've said that on this show before. When teams are having some success with the press against us, we can get the ball, move the ball across, get the ball out wide to Grealish, and oftentimes he's either going to beat a man, or he's going to win a foul, or he's going to be able to retain possession whilst drawing players in. And I think Pep likes Grealish and the kind of effect he's having out wide. Grealish has become one of the more consistent names on the team sheet in terms of not only game time but also being in that same position out on the left, cutting in every time. Yeah, so all of a sudden, Grealish seems to have claimed that left side for himself, same way that Rodri is not really going to move from that defensive midfield role. The right side seems to fluctuate between Alvarez, Foden, Bernardo Silva.
But that's another player that I was going to touch on as well, Bish, because Bernardo, he could come into that midfield and play alongside Rodri and Kovacic.
Yeah.
Then Alvarez can have more game time out on the right, or whether it be Foden. You got Grealish on the left and then Haaland up front. So there is definitely options there for you. But would you expect to see...
What do I want to say, or what do I expect to see?
Yeah, what do you expect to see? And do you expect to see them bringing in somebody else, another body in the middle?
I actually think that
if we've got El Nene over here if you want him.
I'm sure I heard someone say the other day that he's only on 60 bags, and they were like celebrating the fact that El Nene's only earning 60 a week. I think that I thought that we would go out, if we were going to go out and buy another midfielder, that we'd be in for a similar-ish type of midfielder to what Chelsea and Liverpool are looking for. I thought maybe we would go and get... I know Rodri does that role as well, but I thought maybe we would get another person that has Fernandinho-esque qualities, somebody that can cover a lot of ground, break up a lot of football, still get up and down. But clearly they're hoping that kind of a combination of John Stones from one direction and Kovacic in the other direction will give us enough coverage if Rodri's out, or if Rodri needs kind of a defensive partner in the game. So I can't see us going out and buying another winger, to be honest with you. I think we've got enough players in these positions. It's about figuring out where people can go. And why I mentioned Rodri, I guess, which obviously might have seemed like a weird response to you basically asking me we're going to buy a winger, is that if you think about Rodri's position, if Rodri was to be injured for 4 games, who goes in there? Well, like we said, John Stones can go in there. Rico Lewis can go in there. Maybe Kovacic can drop a bit deeper. But in reality, those are all players playing their second position in that space. Do you know what I mean? So really, in Rodri's position, we've only got one player who that is their bread and butter. If you think on that right side, even though right now we don't have a set name on the team sheet for who takes up that position, we've got probably at least 3 or 4 players where that is their either first choice position, or, like a Foden or an Alvarez, where it's kind of a bit unclear what to say. But we've got Cole Palmer's, we've got Bernardo Silva, we've got Foden, we've got Alvarez, we've got Grealish that can go over that side. We've got abundance in that position. It just seems to be the issue, seems to be getting a bit more clarity on where does Foden play? Where does Foden play when De Bruyne's not playing? Where does Bernardo Silva play when he's playing with Foden and Grealish? Where does Alvarez play, if Haaland's playing, so that Alvarez doesn't have a whole season like last year where he's kind of resigned to the bench a little bit? after just being an instrumental player and winning the World Cup, that's not good enough. And Pep will understand that you need to activate Alvarez if we're going to be able to compete on all fronts again. So I don't think he'll want to bring in any more players. I think the risk of doing that is that then Alvarez's minutes get hit, Foden's minutes get hit, and that could have a negative impact kind of long term. I think if we do bring in another player, it would maybe be a young prospect in the middle of the park, slightly deeper lying, or maybe another fullback. But no, I think we'll just try and ride it out. And I think Pep will maybe use the fact that we won the treble last year and that in a way there's a bit less pressure, even though there's still the same hunger, as an opportunity this season to try and bring through some of them players that are kind of on the fringe. That's my take on it. But I don't know really.
Do you know what? I think there's going to definitely be a kind of situation where he's going to try to now find his best kind of system that works, because ultimately you can say KDB out of that team is going to have a massive impact on creativity and goals as well. We've seen with Haaland, probably a lot of his goals that he scored last season, Kevin De Bruyne was a big part of that. Do you know what I mean? Either putting the ball
100%.
on his head, playing him through. And
100%.
there's no Gundogan normally when Kevin De Bruyne is out of the team. Gundogan will come in and he'll step in and he'll fill the boots, kind of like a ready-made replacement. Even though he didn't have the exact same kind of qualities as KDB, he could do the job. At the moment, the only person that I can really see going into that midfield and actually playing the ball through the eye of a needle or doing something like that is Bernardo Silva. But whether he's got that, he's out of practice in that position, because it's been a very long time since he's really been deployed there. He's always, like you said, he's always been playing out on the right or wherever he can get minutes, really. So that's going to be interesting to see. And as an Arsenal fan, we don't wish injury on anybody, but if somebody's going to get injured out of City's team, if it's KDB or Haaland, you know, that's going to probably give the most impact. And obviously, unfortunately, we've had an injury ourselves as well, which we'll touch on, because I want to see where this weighs up Arsenal and City for their title hopes. Timber, man, Bish. Timber, he's out. ACL, looks like he's missing at least 6 months. For me, I think it's
And he
probably
looked
going to
good,
be...
right?
Bro, he
He
looked
looked good at
unbelievable.
first sight.
He looked unbelievable. And the thing is, he's been getting played out of position. He's been getting played at left back. We know he's normally a right back or a right-sided centre-back, could also move into midfield. But he's been playing at left back and he's been looking absolutely unbelievable, I'm telling you now. And I think there was a challenge that he made just before he kind of like... Well, to be fair, he made the challenge and he clutched down at his knee and you could see there was a bit of a problem. And then half-time was only a couple minutes away. But where the problem is that at half time, they should have assessed the situation properly. But it looks like they didn't. They let him
That
come
was
back
what I was
out.
about to ask you. Do you think that was just a bad luck situation, or do you think this was mismanagement on Arsenal's part?
I think
It
it's
seems
a bit
like
of
it from the
both.
surface, right?
I
Like he
think it's
should have probably
definitely
come off.
mismanagement. Definitely mismanagement, because we had players to come in and step in and play
Especially
that
this early
position.
in the season.
Exactly. And at that time, Nottingham Forest were not giving us or causing us any kind of problem. It didn't cause us that kind of problem. We didn't even start Gabriel. So it just shows you that we could have made that change early. We don't need to risk it. But it looks like it's the curse of Arsenal, bro. Get me, we sign a player, bam, they're injured straight away. And this is a big problem for me.
Do you think that, I mean, obviously there could be structural things in the club that are causing issues with injuries, like, you know, physio or training style and stuff. But do you think that there's any chance? I've seen a few people saying in the last week or two, that a couple pundits saying that they're concerned that Mikel Arteta almost seems, I don't want to say too hungry. I don't think that's the phrase people have been using, but like almost sometimes like it's too energized. It's too
Basically
and I said
overworking
this,
the players.
or whether just that culture and that kind of, you know, highly strung, high intensity, you know, high emotion, sprinting down the touchline at Charity Shield and stuff. We want to see that passion, but does that end up translating into sometimes unhealthy practices with how we're managing ourselves, whether it's being overworked or whether it's players overworking themselves, pushing themselves too hard, whether it's players not wanting to come off when they've got a bit of a niggle because they're wanting to, you know, fight or kind of show their willingness, you know. Obviously, this is all just speculation, but do you think that there's any chance that there could be something going on there that things need to just be calmed down a little bit, or do you think it is just a bit of bad luck, maybe a little bit of bad man management within the game and nothing further?
To be fair, I think it's the latter. I'm not gonna lie. I like it when Arteta's showing passion because I'm a passionate guy. You get me? So I expect to
Mm,
see that. I don't want to see a
mm,
guy sitting on the sidelines looking like he don't give a fuck about what's going on. I want to see a
yeah,
winner, somebody who wants to win, somebody who's determined to win, and that's what you do see with
yeah,
Arteta. You can't really
yeah,
take that away from him. Because of him, they started to introduce yellow and red cards to referees this season, and
yeah,
it just shows you. Last season, we were pretty much there all the way up until the last moments where maybe people could say, yeah, Saliba got injured, a few people got injured, and it kind of fell apart for us. But we were there, and that was a massive improvement from what we've seen over the last 19 years. So I
yeah,
like what he's doing. I think it was a little bit due to man management. I think the physio should have probably looked at it differently and thought, we can't really risk
yeah,
him because he's a new signing, just signed him 34 million, a lot of potential. He adds something to this current side. When he's playing in the back, you can see he's definitely adding something to it. And it's kind of softened the blow for me seeing Timber come in the team, knowing Kieran Tierney's on his way out
yes,
because we didn't really have many good defenders that can play left back or right back. And he's come in
yeah,
and kind of softened the blow, even though I don't want KT to go. And it looks like that's probably not going to happen now due to this injury. Um, but at the same time, I do also think that it could also be down to a different change of strategy, a different way of training for Timber. You know, he might not be used to be getting pushed as much at Ajax
yeah,
compared to the training at Arsenal, the
yeah,
environment. I think it all comes into play. I think we can't really be blaming anyone for it apart from a little bit of bad luck and you just got to
mm,
take it with a pinch of salt now. Even though all Arsenal fans are disappointed, I'm majorly disappointed, bro. I think it's a very long time. If he had a small little injury and he was out for a few weeks or whatnot, that's great. Well, it was not even great, but it's better than what it is now. Now we're looking at least a minimum of 6 months, which
yeah,
is not healthy, man. I can see Arsenal will probably go out there in the window and try to maybe make another signing. There's been talks of Barella and a few different people as well. So it looks like we're not completely locked off in the sense of bringing people in. Players will be looking to go out as well, like Nuno Tavares and etc. So it's going to be interesting to see come 1st of September where all teams are at and who's in the door and who's out the door because on transfer deadline day, we know it becomes a bit of a madness, you know what I'm saying? But what I
absolutely.
wanted to ask you, Bish, yeah, with the two injuries that we've got, user kept KDB out, we've got Timber out. I think we are a bit better stack loaded in defence, maybe to manage with
Mm-hmm,
it.
mm-hmm.
But what do you reckon, man? Do you reckon this changes anything in regards to the title push?
It's hard to say, isn't it? Because, like you were saying earlier, are these injuries going to prompt us to go out and make purchases? I was just about to ask you then when you were talking. I was going to say I just had a thing pop up on my phone saying that apparently Arsenal are trying to hijack United's bid for Pavard from Bayern Munich.
Mm. Yeah, I've seen that, but I
Um,
don't know how concrete that is because I think there's
Web,
a
who
few other
knows?
clubs in for him.
Who
Mm.
knows? Yeah. And with City, I think there's a winger from Rennes that they're in for, but apparently they're set to put in another bid for Paqueta from West Ham, which is kind
Mm.
of the prototype of the player I was talking about before. I mean, I kind of mentioned Caicedo and that, but I think Paqueta is actually a better example of like a Rodri-esque player,
Mm.
which makes sense to me. So if these injuries mean that both teams go out and buy, then that could change the transfer run, change the title running based on who the players that come in. If
Mm.
neither of us buy anyone and we're just now left with the squads we've got, I do think that it makes Arsenal's chances more favourable. Not necessarily because Arsenal are going to be less affected by Timber's loss than City
Mm.
by De Bruyne's loss, but I just think that there's more unknown involved with De Bruyne being
Mm.
out. So you take
Mm.
Timber out of that Arsenal squad, and for the most part, it's still pretty much the same Arsenal squad as last season in terms of the main moving parts.
Mm.
Obviously we've got new additions, but in terms of the things that were great about
That
that team, Timber
Zinchenko will be
wasn't.
back as well.
Yeah, Saliba, Gabriel, these are. I mean, even Tierney going, like you said, he's um, really solid defender, and I don't think he's fully out the door yet, is he? So he might
Mm.
maybe they'll hold on to him now anyway. But he wasn't really one of the names that was coming up last season. More so it was a Ben White, it was a Tomiyasu that were coming
Mm.
up as that extra name in the defense alongside your
Mm.
Zinchenko and your Gabriel and your Saliba. So I think that Arsenal aren't massively weakened by losing Timber in terms of just what we know. They might be weakened in terms of what they could have been because he looked like a great player, but we kind of still know roughly what we're dealing with. City without De Bruyne for that many months, and then without Gundogan as well, and then without 2 or 3 other players that have gone out the door, that's a lot more of an unknown involved. And I think that's the best you can hope for with this City team is the unknown, because you wouldn't bet against them even if the whole first 11 changed tomorrow, because that's still Pep and that's still City. But at least with the unknown comes the chance that City might have a fall off, the chance that City might not be able to manage the fixture list, the chance that, you know, some of the players that are coming in to fill them holes might be struggling or run into bad form. Like, there's more chance now in my mind that by Christmas Arsenal are, you know, a stretch clear of City than there was 5 days ago. So yeah, I think it probably does affect the title race in that sense. I still probably have City down as favourites, but maybe just slightly shorter favourites than I had them before. It's that running that's the issue. It's the running that's the issue for Arsenal. And De Bruyne should be back for that.
Everything that you say. I think I echo everything you say. And I think you're right. I think the vital part of the season is the end bit. But from his injury, you got to see how he returns. You get me? Which is still the
They're saying he might
unknown.
have to have surgery. That's the way up that they're making this week, is whether he has surgery, and who knows how he comes back from the surgery. So, sorry. Go on, Land.
Yeah, so no, I think you pretty much hit the hammer on the nail. I think I would have probably said it all the exact same way as well. I think you're totally right. It's a bit more of the unknown, and that's 100%. The one thing that we do know with losing Kevin De Bruyne is you're losing a lot of assists and goals as well, because he's a player that's so influential. Whether somebody steps in and can emulate that, to be honest with you, I don't think that somebody can. I think Kevin De Bruyne is on a level of his own, and I don't think most people in the Premier League, whether it's at City or any other club, can really kind of live up to that. Maybe there was talk of people saying Martin Odegaard last season because he scored quite a few goals and assists, but Kevin De Bruyne for me is a level above, and he's been doing it for such a consistent period of time. I can't see somebody just coming in and emulating that for one season or half a season. I just can't see it.
And I almost feel like sometimes I feel sorry for Phil Foden, that his breakthrough time, where he's kind of got to this age now where he's a more senior and experienced player, that the players that he's kind of competing with, or the players that he's like kind of coming in for or following up behind, are the likes of Kevin De Bruyne, as opposed to when it was David Silva before. Because I think that Foden is more in the mold of David Silva than he is of De Bruyne. Yes, De Bruyne and Foden still have similar qualities and can play that same position, but Silva and Foden, to me, I think that when City were playing with Silva still, the way that our team was shaped and the way that kind of central attacking midfield role was shaped, and the kind of the width and narrowness of the team was different, because we were playing to the strengths of the best players we had at the time, were David Silva, Yaya Toure, obviously Aguero up top as well. And I think that would have suited Foden, like playing as kind of like one of two cams rather than being in this kind of more free-form attack, or having to come inside to where with De Bruyne plays, which is like a more conventional centre midfielder almost. So I think that what would be interesting is, now with him having an extended period about De Bruyne, do you try to just put somebody in, as you said, that's like a kind of a replacement, or that tries to fill that void like for like? Or do you shift the shape a little bit and say, right, how do we adjust things a little bit so that Foden can be Foden and try and get us the same amount of goals and assists, or a similar amount of goals and assists, but not doing De Bruyne things, doing Foden things? You know what I mean? Like I say, at the start of last season, Foden was quite a bit clear of De Bruyne for goals and assists, but that was because he was playing like some second striker off Haaland, you know, arriving late into the box. I don't know what that would mean for the rest of the team around him, and I don't know if we have the luxury of being able to just shape things around Foden, but he's the only one that I feel like has the quality and the potential to, at his best, be able to put up them kind of numbers with what we've currently got there. So
it's
I don't
probably
know.
a confidence thing though with Foden. I think he's definitely got the potential and the quality. We've all seen that from such a young age. He's won so much, obviously, being helped that he's been in a team that he has, but he's definitely got a
But
lot of
still,
quality there.
yeah,
It just depends on confidence as well, because a lot of players work off confidence, and the moment you're in
true.
and out of the team, in and out of the team, you might start losing that self belief, thinking, you know what, uh, does the manager not think I'm good enough? Do you know what I mean? Am I good enough to be in this team? Should I be looking at different options, especially with Euros and stuff coming up? Because for England, he hasn't
Yeah,
really been getting game time. Saka's normally been
yeah.
playing there, Rashford or whoever it might be. And it's surprising that Foden doesn't really get much of a game time for England, because for me, he's one of the better players in the squad. So we're just going to have to wait and see how this whole pans out. But I want to touch on
Quick,
Chelsea for a
just
moment, though.
just quickly
Go
on the
on.
last thing on that, just because you made me think of it. Then, in terms of the England situation, I think that that's another scenario where Foden would benefit from kind of redefining himself and retraining himself as a more
Yeah.
central midfielder or central attacking midfielder, and kind of moving away from being perceived as a winger. Because then he won't be being seen as competent. Because there was a couple of times at that last major competition we were at where yes, your Saka and Rashford were in, but then Mason Mount was finding his way into the team in the middle. There's no way that
Mm,
Mason Mount should be in any team ahead of Phil Foden. So I think if Phil Foden, as Social Join says there, if Phil Foden managed to find more of an Iniesta position in that England team, okay, England aren't gonna. Southgate's not going to have an Iniesta position per se in his squad, but
mm,
we do play with, if they play with, say, Declan Rice, Bellingham, and Foden in the middle, and then Grealish, Saka, and Kane up
yeah,
top,
it's
or
looking
Saka.
frightening.
That's. I think that is a better option for Foden finding a more solid position in that England team than trying to compete with Saka or Grealish or Rashford, because Southgate's England teams, they play with proper wingers, like proper,
Mm.
like traditional, like wide pace, getting in behind, putting balls into the box, like. So I just don't think that that's suited to Foden. I think that's why he struggled to make it into the team, and I think that sometimes Southgate, he's just going to take you as like he's only ever going to see John Stones as a centre back. Do you know what I mean? He's only ever going to
Mm.
see this player as this position. So unless you go to your club and kind of really remold yourself in that position, Southgate's not going to be the guy to start putting flipping, Trent Alexander-Arnold in defensive midfield. Unless that
Mm.
already happens at Liverpool and is tried and tested, then Southgate ain't going to be the guy to do that. So I think Foden should try and capitalize on this situation
I
and
think Southgate will
make a
end up
grip.
getting the chop as well if he doesn't end up winning the next
Yeah,
competition.
that
He'll
could be
definitely
as
get the
well.
chop, and then a manager will come in and probably rejig it around and stuff. But
Change
look,
things.
we've
Chelsea,
done
sorry.
City, we've done
Yeah,
Arsenal. Let's
yeah,
look. We have to touch on Chelsea. They broke the British transfer record. We've seen it was Arsenal a few weeks back. Now Chelsea have
yeah.
come in. They kind of took the piss out of Liverpool a little bit. You get me? They put in a £115 million bid. It looks like Casado wants them. And to be fair, they need it. In the game against Liverpool, they obviously
Mm,
drew the game, and it comes to no surprise considering they've drew like pretty much every single game for the last 8 years or something mad like that.
yeah,
But you could see that. To be fair, I've been very harsh on Chelsea because I just don't like him. That's my honest opinion,
yeah,
and I think a lot of change in a team, it can really disrupt things. But you can see
yeah.
under Poch, there seems to be a little bit more life breathed into the team. I think,
And a bit of an identity. Yeah,
yeah, I think them losing Nkuku and potentially Fafana at the back, and we know that Reece James has a lot of injury problems and Chilwell. That just makes me think, no, it's not going to happen for them. But if they could keep them two players fit, Chilwell and Reece James, and now they've looked like they've added not only Casado but Lavia as well, who's just passed the medical there. They're really starting to look like a proper revamped team. The only problem they've got, in my opinion, is up front. I think that Jackson kid, he looks bright. He looks like he's sharp. But is he going to get you 15, 20, 30 goals a season? I can't see it. And I think that's where their problem might come. Sterling looks atrocious. That's just, I'm telling you now, he looks atrocious.
yeah. It's
Um,
over. It's
it,
over.
it is one of them. But what do you make of this whole Casado saga with
Right.
him? Liverpool putting a bid in, getting
Well,
accepted, and then
the
going
whole
back and forth.
Caicedo and Lavius, because I think the same thing happened twice, basically, right? Like Caicedo's bid got accepted, and then Caicedo said, "Now I want to go Chelsea." So then Liverpool turned and bidded for Lavia, and that got accepted. And Lavia was like, "Nah, I don't want to go to Liverpool either." So it was like in both cases, the players forced the move over to Chelsea. And I don't really know for certain why that is. I don't know if it's because they believe in the project, if it's because of Pochettino, if it's because there's some kind of secret dealings going on with Chelsea, with these Chelsea signings, and the opportunity for them players to go on to Saudi in a few years and make big money, whether that's kind of being spoken about behind closed doors and getting players through the door, because clearly there's some kind of pathway there through Chelsea to the Saudi league. They sold about 6 guys over there, 7 guys over there just from this window, and most of them were guys that same Ted Bowley brought in only a window or two before, and all his money is coming from Saudi. Like, it's too many coincidences for me. So I don't know if there's an element of that going on, or whether people are genuinely looking at that Liverpool team and saying they don't think that they're going to be able to compete. But it would be a weird one, because you would like to think that maybe with Caicedo in that midfield, that would have made Liverpool competitors. Whereas I don't know if Caicedo and Lavia coming in massively changes how I feel about Chelsea, because there's just a lot of unknown. There's a lot of new players. There's a lot of players, like even some of them players you were talking about leaving for Farners and the like. Some of these guys only arrived 12 months ago. I just don't know how easy it's going to be to stabilize a team and create some level of chemistry and identity when you just had so much turnover. And like, there's so little experience in there now, and the experience that exists there isn't really either long-term Chelsea experience, or it's not like pedigree winning experience. Like, that's another thing that I think, Arsenal fans were talking about a lot last season with the likes of Jesus and Zinchenko coming in. There's a difference between experience and then like winning champions pedigree experience. Like, Ben Chilwell is now an experienced player, but I mean, I know Chelsea. Some of them Chelsea players won a Champions League a couple of years back, but for the most part, they haven't really done shit. Excuse my language, but do you know what I mean? Like, they haven't really done much in their careers. They're not winners. They've not been part of winning teams. They've not come from a Real Madrid or a Barcelona or even an AC Milan, or you don't see winners in some of the more experienced players in that Chelsea team. So I just wonder. Like, Caicedo looked brilliant at Brighton, but there's been about 5 players that looked brilliant at Brighton and went to Chelsea and looked pants.
Look at Basuma last year.
Yeah, Basuma. There's a lot of that. Basuma was really. I mean, prime Basuma when he left to go to Chelsea. He might have been at the time more highly rated than Caicedo. I mean, I know Caicedo's got blown up now, and the numbers have got crazy. But in terms of just when they were playing and how we were talking about him week in, week out, Basuma was coming up a lot. Like Arsenal, I know you was a big fan of him. Caicedo obviously was getting his just due, but we weren't really speaking about him in that same breath.
First season in the Prem.
I mean, fair play to Brighton though. Their talent ID and then their ability to take a prospect, put 100 million on their price tag and sell him again. Like, they're gonna have some money to spend at some point. It's incredible. I mean, you keep thinking they can't keep doing this, but even if they can just keep doing that for another 2 years, if they could keep deserving and keep competing and keep buying players for nothing and selling them for 100 million, in this inflated transfer market, it'll only be a matter of time until Brighton will be up. Like, there's only so many times you have to sell a £100 million player before Brighton will have 700, 800 million pound in the bank or something. Do you know what I mean?
To be fair, they sold a thingy to us, 50 million, Ben White. They've sold Trossard. Obviously, that was a bit of a better deal in like 27 million. 115 for Caicedo.
Fofana went from Leicester, didn't
he? Basuma, big money. That was, you know what I mean?
And I think they got some kind of payout for the manager going over there. I think Chelsea had to pay some kind of compensation when the manager and all them went. So
100%.
Yeah, it's a weird situation, and now it's made Liverpool look super bad. Like, Liverpool have come out of it looking disgusting. Like, they just look like that guy at the end of the night at the club. It's just like, first person he tried it with left with someone, the second person, and now they're just scraping around outside looking for anything.
To be fair, I think they've had a deal agreed for the Japanese captain, Endo, from Stuttgart. And obviously, I don't know if people know, but I do a show called 30 Mins Arsenal with Harry. And to be fair, obviously, he lives over there in Japan. He's Japanese. He's obviously half English as well. And he said, yeah, he's a top player, real good.
Nice.
Very highly rated. And to be fair, he
Right, there
think
you
he'll do
go.
well at Liverpool. So
You
we're
might
gonna
have
have
dodged
to
a
wait and
bullet.
see, man. Yeah, because sometimes you gotta just go and find a player that no one's after, no one's even looking at, and that player can come in. And because this is what we used to do, we grown up, Bish, on not us going out there like Man United buying all the Galactico players. We were
Yeah,
grown up on
yeah,
trying to
yeah.
find that star.
You
Do you know what
had
I
to
mean? Look
find
how many
somebody.
stars Wenger
Yeah,
made. Get me?
yeah,
Wenger very rarely brought a world-class player. He is only
yeah,
towards the back end of his career start looking at an Ozil or an Aubameyang and stuff like that.
yeah,
Other than that, everyone else was made.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
They're the ones that really go down as club legends. You know what I mean? Obviously, in your case,
Mm,
you had so many of them. You had the Henrys and the Vieiras, and
mm,
But even at City, pre all of the money, when I look back to players like Ali Benabia,
mm.
Berkovic, and these guys that
Michael
nobody had heard
Ball.
of, yeah, Georgie Conclazy, bro, like guys that are like you just nobody had ever heard of that came from
Mm.
somewhere in the middle of nowhere and then become one of the best players you've seen at your club for God knows how long. I think
But look
obviously
at Vincent
that's
Company,
harder
bro. He's
today.
the prime
Company,
example of it. He's the prime
legendary.
example of it, really. When you think about it, at Man City, somebody who
Yeah,
didn't come
absolutely.
in for because at the time,
Do you
who was it?
think?
Pellegrini. He brought him in.
No, he came in under Sven, I think.
Was it
I
Seven?
might be
That's
wrong.
it.
I'll check. It might
But the
have been
time he
Mark
came
Hughes.
in, there was no big hype. Yeah, it might be Marquis. There might be no big hype about him or nothing. And he
Yeah,
just come in and he's just absolutely unbelievable. And basically, he created his legacy there. Um,
100%.
what did you make of Company's first game against you guys in the Premier League?
It's it. I think it. So that situation. There was an article that came out yesterday as well, where apparently Vincent Company is kind of suggesting that there's a cohort of Burnley fans, and it's probably not. You know, it's not a very far-fetched claim to make, but he's saying that there's a section of the Burnley fans that were booing um, after City beat Burnley in the opening game, and he kind of has responded to it, basically saying the colour of my skin should make it clear when they said why did they think Burnley fans were booing in the first game of the season. I think Burnley need to be careful because they've got an amazing manager who's done like a very loyal thing in like staying and wanting to prove himself there. But if they
Mm,
start losing a few games and then some of these just backward racist people over there start booing or even take the racism out of it, right? Even if there's just an ungratefulness, if he starts to sense like not being appreciated, not
mm,
being acknowledged and recognized for what he's done over there, I think he can just leave and go somewhere better. The
mm,
credit that he's got in the bank now from what he's done at Burnley is there now. Like he'll get a few more bites at the cherry for what he did there because he didn't just get him promoted. They were playing different football to what the Championship's not seen in years. Do you know what I mean? So
mm,
I think that the question is going to be whether Burnley and the Burnley fans and Burnley culture is going to be able to remain compatible with Vincent Company when they're not winning every single game because they're not going to win every
mm.
single game this season. They came up against City first game of the year, and I think they were always going to lose that game. Like I just don't think. I mean, one, it's City, and two, it's Company coming back to City. It's just too difficult to get the right
But
energy or
I think you
to
got to give
bring the
him a bit
girls.
of credit though, because they made a go of it, and there
They
could have
played
been
well.
many times in that
Yeah,
game where they could have got a goal, or they looked
yeah.
like they had
They didn't look
City on the
terrible.
back foot. Yeah, man. I just think the
I just don't
quality
think that was a
prevailed in
good.
the
I don't
end.
think that was. I don't think that gave us much of an idea of what they're going to be able to do this season, though. I think we'll get
Yeah.
a better idea from the next few games. But like I say, that article, I only just seen it last night. That would be worrying for me if I was, a follower of Burnley because you don't have to be there. There's plenty of other
To
clubs
be
that I'm
honest
sure
with
would
you,
take him.
after what he done last season, I guarantee you somebody like an Everton or somebody like that would have probably looked at him or
Oh
and
Lord,
probably went in
yeah.
for him definitely.
Apparently
But look,
Chelsea supposedly tried to approach him behind the scenes before they got poached, but
no
who
way, I
knows
didn't
if
even
that's
know
true.
that, to be fair.
I
But
don't
I
know if
think
that's
they've been
true or
after
not.
Poch for quite a while, though, aren't they, really, Chelsea?
Yeah,
They've been big admirers of
yeah,
him. But look, let's put them
yeah.
to one side for a second. We want to finish up on one team because this team people think are going to fall off. This team, people are saying, yeah, it's kind of a bit lucky, the kind of position that they finished last season. And that's Newcastle, man, because
Mm.
they had the best win of the opening day for me, in my opinion. I think Aston Villa are not a joke of a team, decent team,
Yeah.
and they absolutely annihilated him. Sandro Tonali,
Yeah.
goal on his debut. Now the midfield's looking crazy. Isaac, we touched on it in Premier League Unpacked last week as well, that we
He's
think
getting mad.
he's going to be
Yeah.
coming and really be showing his own.
Yeah.
5-1, man. What's going on there, Bish? People
Oh
sleeping on
man.
Newcastle.
I think it's hard. I think for a lot of us, when we did our predictions a week or two ago, it wasn't necessarily that any of us were saying we think that Newcastle are going to drop off. It was more that we felt like some of these other teams were going to step up, and that maybe if Newcastle plateaued a little bit from last season and was kind of on the same level, that wouldn't be enough to hold that position because Liverpool and Chelsea and all of them are coming. But absolutely, I mean, I think that's a pretty good shout from
Yeah.
social joins. Obviously they've got Trippier there as well, and they've got people from that Atletico Madrid side that have got that culture. But I'm not that far off agreeing. I mean, obviously it's only the first game of the season, but as soon as I watched them play and I watched the way they were playing, and I just looked at Eddie Howe and I just thought, you're just going to be counted out until you can't be counted out no more. You know what I mean? I think for a lot of us, we thought Eddie Howe was going to be like a transition manager for Newcastle. Like he'd be their version of like Mark Hughes. You know what I mean? The guy that comes in and like, they get a few big name players and he kind of helps to introduce a bit of a style of football and get you a bit further up the league. And then once you get Champions League football, you bin him off and you get a bigger name manager. But in fairness to Eddie Howe, it's not just that he looks successful. He looks like he knows what he's doing, and he looks like they've got a style of play.
And he looks like everybody respects him to a level that they can
yes,
see what he's doing and they believe in what he is doing.
yeah,
But sometimes when
yeah,
you start bringing in bigger names and you start developing a bit, players start
it
getting
can
a
be a
bit too
problem.
big for the boots and they can think, right, who are
Yeah,
you? You've not won anything. You beat this,
yeah.
that, and the other. Do you know what I mean? So, but you can see he's
Well, even
really
them
got
getting
them
rid of
by the
St.
reins.
Maximum, you know what I mean? They sold St. Maximum. A lot of us from outside of Newcastle was feeling like, oh, St. Maximum is a baller. That's a big loss or whatever. But in reality, he was a luxury player in a lot of ways. Someone like Tonali, who's come in now, looks like you're going to get constant and instant impact from him in the middle of the park. Do you know what I mean? They looked fascinating in midfield because between him, Joe Linton, and Gimenez, you've got like three players that can kind of all do the same thing, but in different ways, if that makes sense. Like all three of them can get stuck in and make a tackle going backwards. All three of them can pick the ball up on the edge of the area and score a goal or play a deadly pass. But like obviously all of them have slightly different qualities. So I think that's going to be a really hard midfield for teams to deal with this year because, and I think Howe said this in his post-match interview, he's saying we're trying to make that midfield free and the midfield free shape as unpredictable as possible. We're trying to make it so teams, and other midfields, like when they come up against City, for example, their aim is going to be for Rodri to not really know which of the three that he needs to be keeping his eye on. Which of the three is it that's going to be putting me under pressure? Which of the three is it that I have to watch out for arriving late on the edge of the area? Because they can just alternate it and change it and put they could drop Joe Linton deep and have Gimenez further up and then switch that around 10 minutes later. And I think that they're one of the only teams that has that kind of midfield free of like very like similarly all-round midfielders, combative midfielders. And I think that Atletico Madrid shout's actually a really good shout.
Yeah,
And
I do as
I
well. I think
like it. I
Harvey
like
Barnes
it.
as well, man. Good signing. He's
Harvey
coming in
Barnes looks
for the
like a great
team.
signing. And there's a lot of players in the defense that a lot of players in that defense that we thought maybe just had an above average season and were going to fall off, but a lot of them guys still look solid. You know what I mean?
But we
The
know
likes of your
what Botman
Botmans
was.
and your
Yeah,
Shaw.
Botman.
You know what I
And
mean?
to be fair, I think them also now looking to maybe add another body to that back
Yeah,
four. Like
yeah,
they're building a bit of depth now within their squad and going into the Champions League,
yeah,
that's what they're going to have to do. I don't think it's over from Newcastle. I'm very
yeah,
surprised that Aston Villa got pumped in the way they did. I think
yeah.
losing Tyrone Mings is a big loss for Villa.
Big
You
problem.
can
Yeah.
clearly see that. Musa Diaby, I knew he was going to be firing on all cylinders like a knobhead. I took him out of my fantasy team
Oh,
like on the day before because I just thought, you know what, I just tried to. It's still a bit of the unknown. Should I gamble it now
yeah,
or should I go in with a Rashford, which I end up picking? So I kind of messed up. But big up to you, man. Fantasy
I was
football,
going to
bro. You're
say,
at the
top
top
of
of
the
the tree
league
there.
while we're
Yeah,
talking
just
about it.
you know what?
91
Let me.
points. And I
Do you know
messed up
what? I
as
held
well
my
because
own though.
I had Mings flipping playing. I had Mings and
Same here.
Stones, and
Same here.
neither of them was able to play. So I've got a 0 in defense when I could have had
Same here.
Tonali in there.
I had
But yeah,
Mings and then me.
it was a good. Yeah, I seen your team. Your team was good, and I used my triple captain on Haaland. So
Mm.
obviously that's kind of given me a bit of an artificial boost. But big up to anyone in the comments who has joined the league.
Yeah.
If there is
If you
anybody
want
that's
the
joined,
code, make sure you DM me
yeah,
on Instagram and I'll
yeah.
send you the code and you could join the league as well. But I must
We've
say,
currently
Bish,
got
there, I
50
think
people in the league.
if I would have went if I would have tripled
Triple.
my points, I think I would have been top of the league there, fam.
You would have. You would have.
You know
You
what I mean? But
definitely
I
would
think
have.
you gotta save
You'd be
it.
on
You gotta
95.
save
You'd
it.
be 4 above me. I mean, for me, I was always going to use it on Haaland, and City
Yeah,
versus Burnley first game of the season was as kind of safe as bet as any. So I just went for it. Last year, I
yeah.
put my triple one on Haaland, and on one of the only games of the whole season that he didn't
You
score.
didn't
So I weren't
score.
taking that risk again. I just
Yeah.
thought, let me get it out of the way because it's less to think about. But we will probably be checking in on the FPL.
We've
Uh,
got 50 teams and then
throughout
one
the year.
person waiting to be added. So
Yeah,
it seems like it's a big league this year. Do you know what I mean? And if people, like I said,
yeah,
if you want to get involved, hit me up on Instagram. I'll send you over the code and the link and whatnot to join the
yeah,
league. And it's all game
definitely.
fun and games, to be fair. But Bish, we come to the end of the show, man. It's been
Yeah,
brilliant just to sit here and chop it up with you like the old times.
100%.
And
Yeah,
we got through quite a few bits and bobs, but we will definitely be back on Monday now at normal times, or if it does
yeah.
change or we do find a new time that's better suited, we will
I'll
definitely
let you know.
inform you as man. But people,
Let
make
us
sure you
know in the
smash the like
comments
button.
if you've enjoyed us being back to 2 as well. Let us know if you enjoyed this format. Obviously, we'll still be getting together with the rest of the gang, but if you want me and Premsy to make time for more shows with just the 2 of us as well, then let us know and we'll try and make it happen for you. So let us know how you found it.
100%. 100%. But again, people, make sure you smash it, the like on the video, subscribe if you're new. Go and subscribe to City Zone. Content will be coming out soon. Obviously, Bish, he's just been a very busy dad. So he hasn't really put too much content out, but I'm sure that
Yeah,
content is going to be coming out.
it's coming.
Maybe we
It's
might even
coming.
do a bit of an alternate where Premier League Unpacked, we do 2 episodes. One might be on his channel
Yeah,
and one might be on my channel, and we might keep it
we'll
doing it
figure
like
something
that.
out for you guys. Yeah,
So make sure you go over there. I am going to put the link into the description for the City Zone. I just haven't had time to do it yet because I was so much rushing around to set up the stream. Yeah, I couldn't even. I had about this
of
year's about
course.
3-4 minutes late, but I am going to put that in. So make sure you do go over there and subscribe to that as well. But like I said, we'll see you next week. Peace and love, and we'll see you on the next one.
Peace.